So if you want to build like a massive 130-pound canine athlete, the absolute most important workout you can possibly give them is a nap.
Yeah, literally just a nap.
Right. Today, we are taking a deep dive into the completely counterintuitive physics and biology of managing a giant breed dog. We've got this huge stack of educational material detailing the life cycle care of a giant breed's physical body, specifically the Newfoundland.
And it's such a fascinating biological challenge, honestly.
Totally. And the mission today is to extract the vital insights from these sources on how to maintain that massive canine body without feeling completely overwhelmed by it. Think of this as, your shortcut to being a deeply well-informed caretaker or honestly just a much more knowledgeable dog lover.
Because when you're dealing with a giant breed, I mean, the margins for error are just razor thin.
Yeah, the physics alone.
Right, the actual physics of moving that much mass, the gravitational pull, the joint load, the thermal output, it completely changes the rules of engagement. Like, what works perfectly fine for a Labrador will actively harm a giant breed.
So to set the baseline here, I want you, the listener, to visualize a scene straight from the source material. Picture a fully grown 130-pound adult Newfoundland on a cool morning walk.
Oh, I love this visual.
Right. So they're slow to start. It takes a second to get all that mass moving, but then they settle into this incredibly steady, deliberate, powerful rhythm.
Just super grounded.
Exactly. There is absolutely no frantic sprinting. It is just weight and strength moving forward, stride after stride. It looks like a freight train getting up to cruising speed.
Every single footfall is purposeful.
But then, and this is the crazy part, that exact same heavy grounded dog reaches a body of water and the transformation is wild. They wade in, the water takes the weight off those joints, and suddenly that massive frame looks entirely weightless.
They just glide.
They glide. It's in that specific moment you realize exactly why this breed became legendary for water rescues on the harsh North Atlantic coast. I mean, they are aquatic engines.
It's a beautiful contrast, but it also sets up the biggest misconception about these dogs.
Which is,
Well, because later that same afternoon, you will probably find that same majestic water rescue dog sprawled out totally flat on the cool kitchen tile, panting softly, and just absolutely refusing to move.
which means we need to bust a massive myth right out of the gate here. Newfoundlands are not lazy.
Not at all.
When you see that dog flattened out on the tile, you aren't looking at a lazy animal. The sources are clear on this. You are looking at a highly efficient thermodynamic engine actively managing its own heat load.
Right. The tile acts as a heat sink.
Yeah, the dog is literally pulling heat out of its core and transferring it into the floor.
And that distinction changes everything about how you treat them. Because they are calm indoors, because they lack that frantic bouncing off the walls energy of like a herding dog, people wrongly assume they just don't need much exercise.
Right, they just think, oh, it's a rug that breathes.
Exactly. But being calm is not the same as being low need. A calm giant dog still requires a body that is deliberately cared for in motion. Regular structured movement is really the only thing that lubricates their joints, keeps their digestive tract moving, and dictates whether they'll even be able to walk comfortably as a senior.
So if you own a giant breed, or you're thinking of getting one, or even if you just love understanding how different physiologies work, this deep dive is going to completely upend how you view the concepts of exercise and rest.
It really will.
Because before a Newfoundland can lumber gracefully down the street, it has to actually build that massive frame. Which brings us to early development. And okay, let's unpack this because I need to push back on something here.
Sure.
My instinct, and I think the instinct for anyone who watches sports or goes to the gym, is that if you want to build a giant, powerful, robust frame, you need to start conditioning them hard right away.
Right, the human logic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm picturing a young athlete doing 2-a-days at the gym. You want strong bones and big muscles. You have to push the body to adapt.
What's fascinating here is that while that makes logical sense in a human context for a giant breed puppy, that assumption is incredibly dangerous.
Really?
Oh, yeah. The sources explicitly state that a Newfoundland puppy needs movement that teaches the body, not movement that tests the body.
Okay, explain the biology of that. Why can't I test a growing puppy?
Because of how canine bones actually develop. So when a puppy is growing, their long bones, like the ones in their legs, they aren't solid yet.
Okay.
They have these soft areas at the ends called growth plates or epiphyseal plates. And this is soft, developing cartilage where new bone tissue is actively being formed. In a giant breed, Those pleats stay open and vulnerable for a really long time.
Like how long?
Sometimes up to 18 months or even 2 years.
Wow, 2 years.
Yeah. Now, factor in their rapid weight gain. You have a puppy that might weigh, say, 50 or 60 pounds at just 6 months old, but their bones are still soft.
Ah, okay, so when that 60-pound puppy jumps off a 2-foot-high couch...
Exactly. Gravity and mass multiply the force of that impact. It's not just 60 pounds hitting the floor. The sheer kinetic energy of that landing puts massive destructive stress on those soft growth plates.
That makes total sense.
It can cause microfractures, angular limb deformities, or even permanent joint damage. This is exactly why you cannot take a giant breed puppy on forced long runs. You don't let them leap out of the back of an SUV. You don't let them bound down long flights of hardwood stairs.
Because you're just hammering soft tissue.
Right. You are subjecting soft, forming joints to repeated high-impact collisions.
That makes the focus on sleep in the source material makes so much more sense, because we look at a puppy sleeping for like 18 hours a day and think they're just taking a break.
But they're not.
Right. Physically, biologically, growth happens while the puppy is sleeping. The release of growth hormones peaks during deep sleep. So those long, sprawling naps aren't downtime. They are the biological blueprint actively at work, constructing a massive frame.
You are protecting a very delicate construction process. And this is crucial. If you notice a puppy limping, tiring, unusually fast, resisting movement, or growing in a way that looks even slightly asymmetrical, you do not take a wait-and-see approach.
No rubbing some dirt on it.
Definitely not.
Oh.
You don't assume it's just growing pains. Because the frame is actively fusing, you need a veterinarian to intervene immediately before a temporary issue becomes a permanent structural defect.
Wow. Okay, so let's fast forward a bit. The puppy survived, the growth plates are safely closed, the skeleton is fully baked. Now we have an adult dog.
A very large adult dog.
Yes. So the rules must shift from protecting growth to sustaining mass. And this brings up a dynamic that really reminds me of the human weekend warrior syndrome.
Oh, that is the perfect comparison.
You know the type, right? Someone who sits in an ergonomic office chair for 40 hours all week, wakes up on Saturday, tries to run a sudden half marathon, and just immediately tears a meniscus. How does that translate to a dog carrying 130 pounds?
Well, it translates into catastrophic soft tissue injuries. An adult giant breed thrives entirely on consistency. The connective tissues, so the tendons and ligaments supporting that massive frame, they need regular, moderate stress to stay elastic and strong.
Right.
So if you have a dog that literally lies on the couch all week, and then on Saturday you drag them on this ambitious 5-mile hike over rough terrain just because the weather is nice, you are essentially asking cold, unconditioned tendons to suddenly manage huge dynamic loads.
And we should probably clarify what actually counts as conditioning here. Because I hear people say all the time, well, I have a half-acre fenced-in yard. The dog is out there all day, so they're getting plenty of exercise.
Yeah, that's a huge myth.
Wandering around a yard does almost nothing for their physical fitness.
Very little, yeah. Unstructured yard roaming is mostly just stop-and-go sniffing. It entirely lacks sustained aerobic conditioning. It doesn't put the dog into a rhythmic linear trot, which is the specific gait that pumps synovial fluid through the joints to keep them lubricated.
Plus, a yard offers zero leash practice.
Zero leash practice and very low mental engagement.
So how do you know if your structured daily walk is actually hitting the sweet spot? I mean, you can't just ask the dog if their hamstrings are tight.
No, you have to measure their recovery. Recovery is your ultimate feedback loop. When you get back from a walk, observe their respiration. How many minutes does it actually take for their heavy panting to settle back into a normal resting breath?
Oh, that's smart.
And more importantly, watch them the next morning when they get up from their bed. Are they moving freely, or is there a noticeable stiffness in their back legs? Do they struggle to get their hips under them? Because if they are stiff the next day, you overreached.
I really love the guiding principle for this in the text. It says a Newfoundland needs to be well used, not worn out.
Yes, exactly.
Because if you have a bored, restless dog that is, chewing on the baseboards or pacing the house, the solution isn't to put a weighted vest on them and run them into the ground physically.
If you try to exhaust a giant breed physically, you will break their body before you tire their mind.
So what's the fix?
The solution to a restless dog is cognitive load. You pivot to mental enrichment, scent games, hiding their meals in puzzle toys, practicing complex obedience commands. Just 15 minutes of intense mental focus will exhaust a dog far more safely than forcing them to walk an extra 2 miles.
And pushing for sheer physical exhaustion is incredibly dangerous anyway because of a hidden variable that can turn a healthy walk into a medical crisis.
The heat.
Well, yes, but before the heat, and here's where it gets really interesting, we have to talk about the invisibility cloak.
Ah, the coat.
Yes. A Newfoundland's thick double coat is gorgeous, makes the dog look imposing, powerful, and robust, but it also perfectly hides dangerous excess weight.
This is where we have to look closely at the physics of mass again. For a giant breed, weight is not an aesthetic issue, it is a mechanical issue.
Right.
Every extra pound of fat is physical pressure loaded onto joints that are already working near their maximum biological capacity. Extra weight degrades their stamina, it compresses their respiratory system, making it harder for the diaphragm to expand. It's a compounding problem.
And because of that massive coat, you're saying a dog can easily be carrying 15 pounds of excess fat, and visually they just look slightly more fluffy.
Exactly. Which means you cannot manage a giant breed with your eyes.
You have to get hands-on.
You really do. You need to develop a tactile map of your dog. You should be regularly pressing your fingers through that thick coat to physically feel the ribs. You should be able to easily feel the rib cage without pressing hard, and you should be able to feel an actual waistline tapering behind their ribs.
And if you can't feel the ribs,
They're overweight. And if they're overweight, they're in extreme danger the moment the temperature rises.
and that brings us to the heat threat. Because the heat threat is the single most critical environmental factor for this breed.
Without a doubt. We are talking about a dog with a thick, dense undercoat designed to trap body heat, covered by water-resistant guard hairs. It's literally like wearing a down puffer jacket zipped up tight with a windbreaker right over it.
In the sun.
Right. So when you combine that trapped thermal energy with the sheer metabolic heat generated by a 130-pound body in motion, an ordinary 75-degree sunny day can trigger heat stroke.
So if you're walking them, what are the biological red flags that they are tipping from just being warm into an actual medical emergency?
The first is respiration that loses its rhythm.
Yeah.
So normal panting is steady, desperate panting is frantic, it's shallow, and it doesn't slow down even when you stop walking.
Okay, watch the breathing.
And watch the saliva.
Yeah.
If it goes from normal drool to thick, ropey, excessive foam, they are dangerously dehydrated. And if the dog shows sudden weakness in the hind end, seems confused, or vomits, their internal organs are literally beginning to overheat.
Oh, wow.
That is an immediate, drop-everything veterinary emergency. Walks absolutely must be restricted to the coolest margins of the day, early morning before the pavement heats up, or late at night.
Okay, I'm getting mixed signals here, though.
So,
You're telling me heat is a massive crisis for these dogs. But historically, as we established earlier, these are legendary water dogs bred for the freezing, choppy waters of the North Atlantic.
right.
So wait, if they are built for extreme aquatic environments, why can't I just take them to a lake in July and let nature take its course? Doesn't the water solve the heat problem entirely?
This raises an important question, actually, because it's a very logical assumption, but it completely ignores the reality of open water physics.
Okay, break that down.
Yes, swimming is incredible, low-impact, full-body cardiovascular conditioning. The water supports their joints perfectly. But a calm, flat, chlorinated backyard pool with concrete steps is a completely different physical environment than a natural lake or a river.
Right. Think about the entry and exit points.
Exactly. Getting a heavy, wet, exhausted dog up a steep, slippery mud bank requires massive leverage from the dog's hindquarters. They could easily tear a cruciate ligament just trying to scramble out of a lake.
That's terrifying.
And furthermore, even a dog bred for the North Atlantic is subject to muscle fatigue. Cold water causes vasoconstriction. The blood vessels narrow to preserve core heat. This means less oxygen gets to the muscles, which means fatigue sets in much faster than you think.
So you have to actively lifeguard these dogs.
You are the lifeguard. They will push themselves to keep fetching a stick until they physically cannot keep their head above water.
And the other thing that blew my mind in the sources is what happens after the swim, because you'd think the dog gets out, shakes off, and goes to sleep. But a soaked double coat left sitting against the skin in a warm environment is a recipe for disaster.
It completely breaks their thermoregulation. When the undercoat gets soaked to the skin and the air temperature is warm and humid, the dog cannot use evaporative cooling.
It just traps it all.
Right. That wet fur acts like a humid incubator pressed directly against their skin. It traps the dog's body heat and the moisture, creating this perfect microclimate for bacterial overgrowth. This leads to acute moist dermatitis, commonly known as hot spots.
And those are awful.
They are incredibly painful, rapidly spreading skin infections that can erupt in a matter of hours. So post-swim maintenance, thoroughly drying the dog down to the skin and checking for hidden mats that trap moisture is absolutely mandatory.
So even their superpower, the water, requires intense management, which really drives home the reality that most of this dog's life isn't going to be spent doing heroic water rescues or hiking alpine trails.
Yeah, sadly not.
The vast majority of their life is spent navigating the human world of living rooms, hallways, and sidewalks. Which brings me to an analogy. I want you to imagine driving a fully loaded, incredibly heavy commercial truck on a slick, icy road.
Oh man, it requires immense energy just to get the wheels turning.
Yes. And once it's moving, it's incredibly hard to stop, and if you have to turn sharply, the whole thing just loses traction and slides. That exact physics equation is what an indoor Newfoundland experiences every single day on smooth hardwood or tile floors.
That is a perfect analogy because it highlights the mechanism of the damage. When a giant breed tries to stand up from a nap on a hardwood floor, their paws microslip. They don't have traction.
Right.
So their muscles have to fire twice as hard to stabilize the joints. And the cartilage in their hips and knees grinds in unnatural ways just to get vertical. Over years, that daily microslipping wears away the joint cartilage, accelerating osteoarthritis.
So you have to literally engineer your home to respect their mechanics.
You do. You have to lay down runner rugs, heavy mats, or even yoga mats along their main traffic pathways. From the couch to the water bowl, from the bed to the back door. They need tactile grip to move confidently.
That's a great tip.
And as they grow, and definitely as they age, you have to introduce ramps. A heavy dog jumping out of the back of a high SUV onto pavement puts a shattering amount of force on their front shoulders. A simple ramp eliminates that repetitive trauma entirely.
And speaking of the physics of managing them in the human world, we have to talk about the leash. Because there is a terrifying reality about a 130-pound animal on a 6-foot tether. A Newfoundland should never, ever discover its own strength by dragging its owner.
It's simply a matter of leverage and center of gravity. If a dog that size decides to lunge at a squirrel and you aren't prepared, you become a human pendulum.
You're just along for the ride.
You really are. They will pull you right off your feet, dislocate a shoulder, or drag you into traffic. Leash pulling isn't just a quirky annoyance like it is with a 20-pound terrier. It is a profound, critical safety hazard.
So how do you fight that physics equation? I mean, I can't deadlift my dog.
Well, you don't fight it with force. You cannot outmuscle them. You manage it with early, consistent, reward-based training. You establish a heavy reinforcement history for a loose leash while they are still, a manageable 50-pound puppy.
Before they know how strong they are.
Exactly. You reward them heavily for checking in with you, for matching your pace, and you practice calm, abrupt stops. If they pull, the forward motion stops instantly. They must learn that a tight leash is a parking brake.
Because eventually, that powerful adult dog is going to transition into their senior years. And you need them to be manageable when their body starts to naturally slow down. When they hit that senior stage, the routine has to evolve again.
It does.
The cartilage is thinner, the joints have less synovial fluid, but movement still fundamentally belongs in their day to prevent muscle atrophy.
Exactly. The movement just shifts in structure.
Yeah.
So instead of one continuous 45-minute walk, you break it up. You do 3 slow 15-minute walks spread throughout the day.
Okay, pacing it out.
Right. This keeps the joints mobilized, keeps the digestive tract engaged, but completely prevents the deep muscular exhaustion that a senior dog really struggles to recover from.
And this requires you to be hyper-observant. If you see a sudden decline in their mobility, if they are suddenly reluctant to rise from their orthopedic bed, or if they start refusing their short walks, do not just dismiss it with, oh, they're just getting old.
Right. Age is a process, not a disease.
Yes. A sudden change in mobility usually indicates acute pain, which means you need to consult a vet.
And this is where keeping meticulous records becomes the ultimate tool in your arsenal. Managing a giant breed means tracking data.
Yes. Keeping track of their weight trends, their tactile body condition scores, the frequency of any random limping, tracking how their daily routines adapt over the years. The sources actually mention specific tools for this. Using an app like VitalPet allows you to log all these crucial health markers in one centralized place.
Which is so helpful.
Because when you are dealing with a biology that ages differently than smaller dogs, spotting a subtle trend like a slow 10-pound weight gain over 6 months or a slight decrease in walking stamina can literally add years to their life.
It shifts you from being a reactive owner who, only notices when something is terribly wrong, to a proactive caretaker who can actually see the big picture of their health trajectory.
So, synthesizing everything we've unpacked today, managing a giant breed's movement is fundamentally an exercise in deliberate mindfulness.
Beautifully said.
It is about deeply respecting a biomechanical system that operates under totally different rules of gravity and thermodynamics than our own. It means resisting the human urge for weekend heroics. It means literally pressing your fingers through a massive coat to feel for invisible, dangerous weight.
It's a lot of work.
It is. It means acting as an alert, hypervigilant lifeguard, even for a dog bred for the ocean. And it means altering the friction of the floors in your own home just to protect their vulnerable joints.
I think all of this leaves us with something really profound to consider about the human-animal bond, actually.
Oh,
Yeah. We go through life operating under the assumption that we are the ones training our dogs. We train them to fit into our human world. We want them to jog with us, to match our chaotic weekend schedules, to adapt to our hardwood floors and our fast-paced lives.
sure.
But when you invite a giant braid into your home, an animal whose very biology demands careful pacing, cooler environments, deliberate, grounded movement, and deeply structured rest, you have to ask yourself a question. Are you really the one training the dog? Or, by forcing you to manage their unique physics, is the dog actually training you to slow down, to be vastly more observant, and to live at a much more grounded, mindful pace?
Wow. That completely changes how you look at that massive, heavy dog lumbering gracefully down the street, doesn't it? Just the sheer physics of moving a small bear with absolute quiet grace. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the source material. As a quick reminder, as stated in the sources, this discussion is strictly for educational purposes, and you should always consult a veterinarian for any specific health concerns. We'll catch you on the next one.